Hello, hello, and welcome to What's Wrong with the Podcast. Today we're excited to be speaking with Jaime Derringer. Jaime is the founder of Design Milk, a media and e-commerce brand dedicated to modern design, home furnishings, art, and architecture, which has amassed millions of followers worldwide. She is Chief Creative Officer of Design Milk, which includes Design Milk, Ahalife, and Kaufmann Mercantile. Additionally, she co-founded a popular design podcast called Clever that features interviews with designers, architects, and other creatives about the humanity behind design. In addition, Jaime is an artist and a writer. She lives in Southern California with her husband, daughter, and their dog. Jaime, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. You know I love you, and I think this was like way overdue. I think we should have like reached out way before. So thanks so much for being here today. I'm sure most of our audience does know about you, but please tell us more about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I guess the thing that most people know about me is, or might not even know, so I'm telling you now. I started a website called Design Milk in 2006. And it's coming up on 15 years. It's like the longest
Wow.
thing I've ever put my energy into, aside from being married. So I'm really proud of that as well. Yeah, I draw and I paint, and now I'm tufting weird wall rugs. So that's like in a very small nutshell, that is what I do. But if we go back to 2006, I was not doing a blog. I was a project manager in pharmaceutical and medical marketing and advertising and stuff. And I just went down a rabbit hole on the internet of design. And I'd always been interested in architecture and design. So that's kind of how Design Milk started, just as a personal place for me to catalog all the cool stuff I was finding online. And 2006 was certainly a very different time of the internet, when there was a small community, and that community was very supportive of one another. And I think very quickly my site kind of stood out as something a little bit different, or something that resonated with other people. And so
Hmm.
it kind of grew organically from there.
Wow, I can't believe I will. First of all, I don't even remember what the internet world was like in 2006, and that speaks to how much of you know, like a head start you had already with the internet world too. Like you probably are like one of the first people to like really create something so well curated. And still at the time it is, but then probably it was the only thing. And I know we sort of met when it was 2011, and that was already like Design Milk was huge then. So that's amazing. I can't believe like even it's hard I think for any, especially now with being such a big platform, to still stay, different and fresh and have good taste and share good content. Like after almost 15 years, big, big, big props to that. So I just want to say that.
Thanks.
So like, and yeah, I think that timeline tells us enough, like how much you already have seen in the world of internet, and how much you know about it. So I think it's a very interesting year to discuss the role of internet, or responsibility of internet, for that matter. I think especially if we zoom into the design world only and the internet world. What we've seen as a studio was kind of interesting, and I would love to get your thoughts on this too, and sort of like I guess discuss further. So when COVID-19 happened, we've sort of so that what we've seen initially, like observed, and this goes to maybe more to the architecture world, but also in like interiors and product design world. So the conversations happened, maybe the lockdowns happened in March, and it was already getting bigger, a lot of this. So there was this like it felt like in the design world, on the internet, it felt some like obliviousness to like what's going on in the world. And then a couple months later, we started to see these almost like rushed designs that are put out there just because there was like really like instant demand for some sort of solution, but the designs coming out there were really not well thought through, whether to see if it's sustainable or even like good for your mental well-being or whatnot, just like these like six
Hmm.
feet offices, or how do we eat in like plastic bubbles, like all these like we're and like being published in a very legitimate way, which like seeing these two things sort of like made us uh think, well, does is there a responsibility for like the on the for of the internet online, like for design, to sort of lead the conversation on what should happen or call for innovative ideas instead of just like publishing what is being done? Or do we need those publications, I guess, to sort of spark conversation and innovation, or even like for us to be like, well, this is not right, there has to be a better way? So I think as a studio for us that is focused on addressing social and urban problems, we were kind of like, we thought, I wish there were more like actual solutions to this problem right now.
Hmm.
But what do you think? Like, what should follow? Does the internet have responsibility of what's being published, especially in a topic like a global health crisis? Or do we also need that in order to spark ideation and actually good design?
Well, I mean, this is a
Yeah, very
loaded
loaded question,
question.
which has been bothering
I
us for
will
a while.
say,
So sorry to dump it on you.
I no, it's fine. I have a number of thoughts on this, and I think this is still just my
Yeah,
my opinion. But I feel like initially there was a lot of rushed stuff, as you mentioned, coming out. There were some things that just felt like, I don't know, gratuitous
yeah,
or clickbaity, or like they just wanted their name out there, or they didn't know what to do. They needed to be relevant in some way whatsoever, or trying to be helpful, but really weren't. There was a lot of short-sighted
yeah,
design, and we know that these global pandemics, just based on history, that it will get through it. But I think what is more important in the design and architecture industry is to look at those trends and to understand what people truly need long
yeah,
term. Because when you think about architecture and design, there's certainly an element of like products that could be rushed out to market, but there's also this like long-term architecture process, and those processes take years. So you can't just like fix a building overnight,
yeah,
or make a park immediately safe. There's a lot of thought that has to go into it, and sometimes there's permits, and there's politics involved,
yeah.
and in public spaces and things like that. So these things can't necessarily always be rushed and have an immediate solution. But I do also feel like our society sometimes demands that. We want everyone to be Amazon, and it's just not
Mm,
realistic either. I think architecture and design does have a responsibility to keep us safe, and also to consider not only people, but materials, safety, security, all of these things in the production and in that process. So what I really appreciated was, I liked to see the longer term solutions of, and or just even the conversations about longer term things, that this ripple effect that COVID-19 will have through the architecture and design
right.
industry. So like in 5 years, will we be seeing more hard surfaces continue to be out there because they seem more sanitary, cleanable, et cetera? What will we see? Will we see less acoustic products because, oh, people don't want things covered in soft materials because it feels more germy or something?
Mm.
So I mean, those kinds of things are interesting to explore, and I don't know that anyone has like a solution that's definitely going to happen, but like I've really been enjoying the conversations that I've been
Hmm.
having around this with people. Um, and the thing I think I like the most about it is that we're now talking about people and safety and the environment and all of these things that really before we were just talking about things are
Right,
pretty,
right,
you know? Um, and I think that direction, that shift is not going to go away. Certainly there'll be people coming and pumping out new designs every five
right.
minutes, buy, buy, buy. But I think that these conversations and these human connections that we've been having, and a lot of this like humanity that we've been thinking about, hopefully that will continue to be a driving force in the future.
Yeah, we definitely recognize that shift. I think a lot of things that happened this year sort of contributed to that factor too, right? Like not only we were having a global like health issue, but also socially we went through a lot. Not like it wasn't happening, but I think, again, going back to sort of the digital world, that sort of helped in this situation to sort of amplify and really like bring a spotlight to a problem that has been ongoing in our society, and sparked sort of Black Lives Matter, which I think led to a lot of social and environmental and just well-being consciousness in what we're talking about. So I definitely agree on that, and sort of seen that happen in many design studios also taking pledges to sort of participate in that or act on that. So seeing that actually was great. And I think, having purposeful designs out there could only elevate our global landscape and contribute to our society, because designers have the capability to really like create a common language between everyone through like visuals or products or the spaces that we create. So I think that was one like great positive thing that we saw too. I think even to your point in like seeing those like rush designs out there, maybe they also do spark further ideation, or like even in our case when we see something and say like, oh, that's not right, there
Mhm.
needs to be a better design out there, maybe that does push other like designers or architects to sort of do something about it that is more long term. So I guess like then sort of in the digital world, it's kind of almost better to see everything to sort of be able to come to a judgment, right? Then like then we're kind of, so if the internet is too curated and showing only like one way
Mm.
of things, it goes ties to this entire discussion, almost like what's happening with Facebook, doing targeted content. So maybe it is better that actually we are displaying everything so that the creatives out there could sort of start contemplating on, is this the way it should be, or should we like better things?
Yeah, I think this is another really interesting question that also brings in to the mix what you talked about initially, which was like, the internet's
Yeah,
responsibility, right? So we've got all of these apps and algorithms, and they're all kind of feeding us content based on what we've clicked or liked, and what gets the most engagement, et cetera. So going back to things like blogs, or online magazines, those editors are curating, and that's like a more reliable source because you're going to the source. You're not seeing it through a filtered
mm,
media like, Facebook or Instagram, which is just feeding you only stuff they know that you
yeah,
will like, not
yeah,
everything. So I kind of miss the like most recent posts option because
hmm,
I prefer to just see things in order of being posted versus what Instagram or Facebook thinks I want to
right,
see. Because I feel like those algorithms are doing us a disservice, even though they think that they're giving us content we will like. They're just giving us more of the same. They're not giving us
yeah,
alternative viewpoints. It's the same with politics. Like we're not seeing other people's opinions
true,
or life stories and we're unable to make informed decisions based on having all of the facts. And if you just think about it like, you know maybe like a buffet, like you've got all of your options, but like if it's a set menu,
right,
like,
right.
it doesn't work for everybody, you might be gluten-free.
So true, but
I don't
yeah.
know. It's a terrible analogy,
No.
but I'm just kind of saying like it's nice to kind of see and hear everything before you make a decision because that's really an informed decision and it's you making the decision, not someone making it for
Exactly.
you.
And I think it's a perfect analogy to be how to have it like very relatable manner too, because you're so true in like saying, we see that in politics and how it causes like further polarization in a country even, because we not only then live in our bubbles, but we sort of just exist in a digital bubble as well, and we're really not exposed to things. And I think what feeds creativity, like, and many other things, just personal development is the exposure. Like, there's a reason why like traveling even like adds to your, worldview or whatever, right? Like, that just like overall exposure, which initially what the digital world enabled us, like it was a lot of exposure that was so immediate to us compared to like older generations, that we were able to learn much faster. We can research easier. We just have access to more things, like just bringing access and knowledge and awareness on so much stuff. So once you go into going back to curating what you see on your day to day, that sort of conflicts with what it was doing the whole time from the beginning. In as you said, like when so social media sort of evolved into something else. It sort of became your a la carte menu, like whatever you like, you get that. And whereas internet still does exist as a buffet, so it's almost like unfair to sort of be pissed about some of the publications that you don't like, right? Like it actually should be like that and remain like that. So it actually is more inclusive of all content.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that anyone who is, I don't know, looking for new ideas, right? Exposure is something that will pop the
Yeah.
bubble. So, like you said, travel, but also reading other people's
Yeah.
opinions, looking at architecture or art that you don't necessarily immediately resonate with, but maybe the story, you know, maybe I don't know, or maybe the method or the materials used.
That made me think actually, though. Um, when so you started Design Milk in 2006, and now we're in 2020. The internet is a total different world now. So what did you observe over time? And it's quite enough time, I think, to have some like serious observations on the internet world. That you thought it served better for the architecture and design world in some ways, but also maybe made it harder for them? What type of changes you've seen in the digital scape that um, actually weren't really best for us or made our jobs difficult? Or was it really like, no, I think the fact that it grew to this point really could be a helpful
Hmm.
tool or device or means for any architect, designer, or creative?
Well, I mean, let me start with the positive things. There's a lot of wonderful
Also a
things
very
about the
loaded
internet and
question, so
social
feel
media
free
that
to.
democratize design, right?
Yeah,
You now can access anyone from around the globe.
yeah,
So you can connect with architects in India or China
mhm,
very easily. And you can see their work, which is fantastic, right? So I feel like it has made the world smaller in some sense. But in addition to that, it's also
right,
just, you're just inundated with visuals and information, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. And I think for younger designers, I think there's a positive in that, like, you can start a website really fast. If you want to start your own studio, it takes 5 minutes. You just launch a website and put some pictures up there, and you're your own company, right? You're your own design studio. That's fantastic and super easy. On the flip side of
yeah,
that, everybody now has like their own thing. And it's hard to make decisions. And I think people are overexposed and just overloaded, and creatives are so
yeah,
overloaded with the needs of their business, from the marketing to the website upkeep to the photography to all the things that you need to just do to run a business, can be incredibly overwhelming for small studios or independent designers. So while keeping up with everything can be really time consuming, that it's limiting your
yeah,
ability to turn it all off and get creative and really focus on what you wanted to do in the first place, which was design, products or buildings. So it's hard to unplug from that. It's like this catch 22. I mean, I've been talking with a number of like
right,
trend
right, right,
um,
exactly.
people about what's been going on, and there's this like positive negative. It's a double-sided or it's a two-sided coin, right? They're everything about what's going on right now is positives and negatives and polarization. And it's just really, really interesting to see that the accessibility of the internet,
Yeah.
giving everyone a voice, is not only positive, but also can be like a real big difficult hurdle for people.
Yeah, and maybe even sort of like not an equitable or like equal way when some maybe like corporations or bigger companies having the funds to sort of finance their digital marketing campaigns, and which is then get, I mean, all of this better than I do clearly and can maybe explain this more eloquently, but then get much more visibility in the usual audience's eye just because they're paid ads or sponsored or whatever they are, which is also sort of changing the playing field for upcoming designers and artists, right?
Absolutely. And digital spend is up like incredibly, obviously, this year for sure,
Mm,
much more than in the past. But I think that and the algorithms are also really just hurting small businesses because Design Milk had always been a small business. Even if you rewind back 5 years ago, it was like a tiny team of people, and we had like 700,000 followers on Facebook. So Facebook was like, you need to pay us to get people to see you. And I'm like, well, just because I have 700,000 fans doesn't mean we're rolling in money and we could just pay you to like get our posts seen.
hmm,
It's not a fair algorithm. So
yeah,
like bigger companies are able to get through to more people because they have the bigger spend, and small businesses continue to suffer. And it just takes so much more work just to get engagement on a social media post these days.
yeah.
So everybody's getting a little burnout, I think.
Yeah, and I think now sort of the world turning into digital or having to turn into digital, that now there's even more content. Like whoever
Right.
wasn't on online or on social media now is there. I remember like we started our podcast end of like it was November 2019. And then in like 6 months, like everybody had a podcast. Like you already had a podcast, I don't know how many years ago. You were probably also like one of the first to like have it too. But like ours was like, okay, like let's have our expert interviews public. And then like I realized like in 6 months there was so many more podcasts. So and that like overwhelming amount of content, it's hard to even if it's like paid and in your face, and then some of are not, it's so hard to identify which one is good for you or how like the post or the content you're seeing prior to the other one is affecting your current mood. So that's how you evaluate that. Like there is like deep science in it now, I feel like, in
Hmm.
like psychology, where it's like going to the grocery store, and if you see like 50 different options for ketchup, I honestly may end up not getting one because I'm just so
Yeah, you end up having like analysis paralysis or like indecision because there's too many choices. So
exactly.
like that is also part of this double-sided coin or this double-edged sword or whatever you want to call it. It's because the amount of choice is fantastic to have, right?
Yeah.
Options are great, but when it's too many options, a lot of people just can't make a decision. Or they just go with what's comfortable. And sometimes what's comfortable is just doing what they're doing now and not making a decision or just picking more of the same.
So
On the flip side of that, something that's curated like an app, it's only giving you like 12 options. You're going to like all of those options, but it's not giving you the full spectrum of the options. So
mm,
it's like, which one do you want? Do you want all of the options, or do you want a handful of curated options that you're going to like? You're probably going to pick the curated ones, but that is still not an informed decision. So like all of this like crazy algorithm stuff, it's just so mind-boggling, and it presents so many problems. But also, it's I certainly like it too because I start to find more artists or designers that I like based on other ones that I've already seen that I like.
yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. it's the catch 22.
Yeah, I guess this kind of falls back to going back to also like why we do this, like our awareness and recognizing our responsibility on it. Like, I guess there is no harm in like if I need a black shirt, I want to get a black shirt. I want to probably do it in the shortest, quickest way possible where I want to see options that I might like. So, in that sense, maybe Instagram's like sponsored ads might help me. If I check out a few shirts that I like, maybe it's going to show me everything that I might like, which is a more like innocent thing. But if you're doing research on a subject or
Mhm,
if you're like collaborating with artists, I think it's then like it is kind of your responsibility to really do your research because the internet allows you to do so. Like if you don't have to stick with the sponsored ads or like the links that come up on the top or just like Instagram or Facebook, you can actually do your navigation and your homework and really do a deep dive. Like I remember we were doing an artist collaboration I can't remember, maybe like 6 months ago now. And it was for, oh, right now I remember. It was for the Disability Pride Month. So we wanted to work with an artist that had a disability, and it was so hard to find, but it was still available because we were able to reach one artist that actually shared a list of artists with disabilities on her website for people to be able to reach out to. But finding that website, I mean, that website is not promoted, nor like prioritized in Google results or whatnot. But when you do a dig deeping, you actually can find. And then we were able to find many artists that existed on that list. So I think it's kind of becoming, it would be an excuse for people to, you know, not be more inclusive or diverse enough in their processes, claiming that there it's hard to have exposure. I think one thing, if internet allows, seems to be like if you put your heart to it and if you're really like more mindful of what you're doing, it should
mhm.
be serving as what you said. Like it should be giving you all the options in the world and expose you to things.
Well, I think one of the ways you can hack the algorithm, which is kind of what I try to do regularly, is follow a couple of like random people that maybe are like friends of friends, or through a hashtag that you like or something like that. Or even if you're doing research, like following a hashtag you normally wouldn't, and that exposes you to a lot of people and work that is outside of your bubble.
Interesting.
And as soon as you add one person to your list that doesn't match with the rest, you start to realize that there's a whole other bubble and they're in their
Oh,
own bubble. And now you have access to that bubble. So your bubble gets bigger and it's great. I love it.
oh my
It makes
god.
me so happy when I see new stuff in my feed that I don't know somebody and I'm like, "Oh, where did this person come from?" And then I'll like dig into like who's commenting on, like I think that that's super important too. Is like how do you hack the algorithm to get what you want out of it,
Exactly.
or to make your bubble bigger.
Exactly. And that really be mindful of like, as you said, we see this in like social issues or politics where uh, just be aware for ourselves on confirmation bias, right? Like, and then mindfully reminding ourselves saying like, look, maybe let me just add or follow a few different people with different opinions and backgrounds or, means, whatever that is, and like see their world. Because otherwise, like we believe in something and then Facebook and Instagram keeps validating that for us. So we not only we remain in the bubble in that scenario, but we like immerse deep into it, right? Like I think I mean I knew about confirmation bias, but I became like so much more interested in it like after maybe election results, like
Hmm.
seeing how what we're seeing as a content and almost like, I live in New York City, especially after the Hillary Trump election results. Like I think entire New York was in shock, and maybe New York would still be in shock because it's in a bubble. But I think like digital world did not help that. Like we really like did not see a world who was frustrated and felt left behind and really needed to throw a bomb into the system in order to make it work. And like I remember like after that night I was like, why, like when did I sort of felt so apart or distant from rest of like the bigger community. Like I lived in St. Louis for a year. I travel a lot. Like, well, how did I not see this coming? And then I realized, oh, but like everybody I follow sort of posts this, and then probably that's only showing me these contents. I think like that was my biggest like eye opening. And now I like that led us to be more conscious about like even thinking for the design world or what exists in the design world. Um,
I just don't know how you can innovate as a designer when you're in a bubble of more of the same.
so true. So
Or an
true.
artist. You can't push through or push past anything if you're just constantly being validated that like your work fits in with what's going on right now. Artists don't they don't innovate, they don't grow, I think, when they're making work that just fits in or is on trend. I think they grow by making work that people probably don't resonate with right now,
Hmm.
but they might in the future. And that's
Hmm.
innovative design. It's where people get uncomfortable and question things, not like high five each other and say that great job, it looks nice.
Right. Which I guess that I do also want to ask about what you think is the responsibility of an artist. Like I do you think um an artist is just like, I mean, if it's their method of expressing their emotions, they have all the liberty to not, make people like think or question and just want to put their art out there? Or do you think art, because it could be so disruptive and innovative and really thought provoking, do you think it has sort of the responsibility to maybe like not necessarily touching upon today's problems, but just like highlighting subjects or topics in general?
I think it's well, art is very different from design in that
Yeah.
it's not always functional. I mean, there's certainly a gray area there where it's art and design. But I think art is a creative expression, and it could be a creative expression of a frustration or of self, or it could be trying to send some sort of message or make people think or make people uncomfortable. But I don't think the artist has a duty to do any of those things. I think the artist has,
Mm,
just should make what they want to make when they want to make it. I don't think there should be any pressure on an artist to be something
right.
or to say something that,
I
is
guess,
important.
yeah, because
I mean,
also,
I literally make like doodles in my sketchbook. There's nothing political or disruptive about what I do, but it makes me happy. And sometimes it makes other people happy. And that's really super important to me. And that's the best I can do. I'm not making any social change happen with my doodles. So
I mean, you never know though. Like I think your doodles are so abstract in a way that people, I'm sure when they're looking at it, it either connects with something personal to them or sparks an emotion, as you said, but maybe also reminds them of something somehow. Like I think you're right in the sense that like once you put the pressure on the artist, I mean, it is also detrimental to the creation of the art itself, right? Like maybe I mean that free I'm not maybe, but that freedom is necessary for the artist to be able to put out the artwork there. But what it is used for, maybe sometimes the artist doesn't even know how it's going to be interpreted or how is it going to be used or whether it's going to really be the icon of a social movement. It's
yeah.
but I always like you know I look back at, I think what like it was Nina Simone who said that an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And like I think as a mission driven studio, I think that is something that we resonate with. But I also would love to get your thought on, if art was like just free, like had no boundaries, no limitations, no pressure, is it a missed opportunity on like raising awareness or engaging people, because it's also such a powerful platform to do that?
Hmm. Say that one more time just so I make sure I understand that question.
Sure. So th- like the Nina Simone's quote, saying an artist's duty is to reflect the times, is something that we always think about or go back to. And I think as a mission driven studio, it's interesting for us because we feel like, what we put out there has to be, data inspired, backed by research. How is it going to be used by the end user? It's up to them, but we have to do our part. But in the world of art, my question is, let's say all artists are free of what they're doing, and they are already, but there is no pressure or limitation or regulation on trying to raise awareness or address a problem through art. And so the art world is free itself. Do you think, if art does not try to raise awareness through its own medium, is that a missed opportunity? Because it's also such a powerful platform in order to be able to do that, being visual and an element that connects with people.
Well, I mean, another really good loaded question. You're really hitting me with the hard stuff this
I've
morning.
been thinking a
Um,
lot of things before our call today. So
I
I'm also confused. So I'm just,
I truly feel like, I mean, I would say there's a lot of things that could be taken as missed opportunities,
hmm.
especially if you have a large platform. I think if you are a public facing individual, I think it is good for you to use your platform
Hmm.
for change. But I don't necessarily think that anyone has to do that,
Right,
especially with art.
right, right, right.
I wouldn't tell someone they have to do something on their own channel. I just don't think that that's fair. I think people should do what they want to be doing. And also, they might be doing something somewhere else, in some other way, or maybe they're dealing with their own issues. I don't know. But I don't feel like anyone should feel pressure to do something. But I will say that I do think it could be a missed opportunity. Um, so there's kind of like another one of those situations where it's like muddy, you know?
Yeah.
Because I felt like I have a big platform with Design Milk. My whole team, we feel very strongly about certain issues and certain things, and we really want to use that platform for change and for good, and also continue to do our mission, which is basically like sharing independent design and helping share innovations in design. So, we had to make decisions. What are we going to use this platform for?
Yeah.
How are we going to present that? And it gets trickier and trickier these days because there's a lot of social pressure.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, and I guess it ties really well. I mean, you made a connection where, like, just because you have a strong visual communication tool, which could be art, doesn't mean you necessarily have the responsibility to do anything, but it may be a missed opportunity. And similarly, on the internet world, if you have a big following base, again, you're not pressured to, you don't have the responsibility of doing anything, but it also might be a missed opportunity. But it also seems like with generational changes, it might be a demand from, if you have the following. And, I have like influencer friends and they talk about this too, like, you know maybe I just need to have dinner with my family. I don't have to get back to all the DMs that are asking me to address certain stuff. And I have a life too. I'm a person, and it goes to like a very personal thing. As you said, like, maybe someone is in that space just to let off steam or do their business or express emotions. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to do anything. But with the global landscape that we're in and generational shift, that it might be a missed opportunity. Plus, it might be more of a demand from the audience as well, right? Like, are
Mhm.
we? Yeah, I guess that's where we landed.
I think you can kind of flip this conversation too and put it on the design and architecture industry, right? Because if you're an architecture firm or if you're an independent designer or a design firm, And you could be designing, wheelchairs or accessible buildings. And instead you're putting up, hot topics
Yeah.
and really pretty chairs that people just put in a corner and display.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a responsibility to do those things instead of making pretty stuff? Or, like, I think we can flip it on all industries
So
and say, like,
true.
hey, Nike, could you possibly be making X, Y, or Z instead of sneakers? Of course they could, but they choose to make sneakers because that's how they pay their bills and, hire their employees and all that stuff. So we live in this society where it's like, very consumer driven and very capitalist, but also like, you know, you can't really force somebody to do something
Right.
for social good or change or whatever, because we live in a society where everybody's supposed to be able to make their own choices about their own life.
Right. Right.
So telling someone what to do is the opposite of that.
I
So you
guess
take away the freedom and you put pressure for people to do things they don't want to do.
true. But I guess that push and pull is kind of, as long as it doesn't get hostile, but it's kind of
Right.
beneficial, right? Like it makes you think. Like
Sure.
if you still want to do however the way you want to do your business or like create your art or whatever that is, sure, you can go ahead and do that. But it kind of almost like makes you aware now that there's such more open communication through, I guess, social media too, and just digital escape. Like you are more aware of what the audience wants. If you want to respond to that, it's your call. If you don't want to, that's fine. And also it could make you think, like, should we do something about, like, even asking these questions? I mean, change is inevitable, and asking those questions as a business, as an artist yourself, I think that's really interesting. Like, so I guess, in the end.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think asking questions of a business or a person is great because that's that exposure,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's that new perspective. It's popping a bubble, so to speak, again.
Yep.
So I think that's super important. And I also think that, you know, that the pressure should, like you said, it shouldn't be hostile. Although I also feel like sometimes there's a place for that too, but that's another discussion.
Oh, sure. At special moments.
There are special moments and that is, yeah, that's a separate podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess like just this all goes back to what we were saying initially as like the freedom that the internet space should have in order to share whatever you want, do the business however you want, as long as it's like, obviously legal and ethical. And really for social media to just like, I mean, not considering the algorithms, but also to maintain as a tool for transparency and open communication. Like, if you do, you want to really understand what your customers think of this new product? Like, I think in that sense, you can get instant results already, like in Instagram, instead of
Right.
trying to do surveys with your, target audience.
Mhm.
So there, like that freedom, I mean, that has contributed so much to the betterment of the society. It's just once, sort of, I get everything, if they're being curated to the point where sort of putting people into silos, or being dominated by corporate money only, there are possible, like, not possible, but problems that we're already seeing, but maybe even bigger threats because of all of that. So I guess, one last question on that would be, what do you see for especially like small businesses or more boutique businesses or artists or like designers, especially have a big, internet presence or want to be there? um what would your, I guess, what would be your like survival kit advice, and also what would be a way to like help yourself thrive?
Oh, okay. Well, first is that you shouldn't be on your phone 24/7.
Good advice.
I think it's super important to make time to stop and smell the roses, take a walk around the block,
Yeah.
get some fresh air and vitamin D, enjoy time with your family, take a nap. All of those things are incredibly important too. The screen will be there when you come back to it, and you will never reach the end of the scrolling. So
So
don't
true.
sit there and endlessly scroll forever, because there is no end.
Yeah.
Um, I also think that um, if you are planning on running a business or are running a business, but you're also a creative, trying to balance those things is very difficult. The creative time is super important. So I would say maybe focus on a handful of the things that are working, and don't feel pressure to just have things because other people have them. Like if Facebook doesn't work for you, like forget it. Don't waste your time.
Right.
Don't force it. Just because your competitor or this person down the street also has a Facebook and they're killing it, that doesn't mean that you are going to, have to do that
Right.
too. So I think you have to expend your energy only on the places where it really makes the most sense.
Great advice. I think that's really like mind occupying for so many artists, like designers, architects, who, especially if they don't team up with it, or don't have marketing people or business people on their teams, it's a very common, constant struggle that keeps popping up and is mentioned. And I guess, the digital world being endless, and also even like being updated every 5 seconds. Like I can't forget, I was in a Google Ads training class once, like years ago, and the something with the platform got updated during the training session, and the instructor was like, "Oh, they updated this." Like it was a surreal experience. So it's kind of so unfair to put that pressure on yourself. I mean, uh, I do want to ask this because like we're also really big on collaborations, but do you think there are ways to sort of address this like lack of knowledge or skill set or capability through sort of strategic collaborations with like different skill sets?
Oh, collaborations are my favorite because one person is not going to be great at everything.
Yeah.
And also, you can learn new skills, or you can learn something new from collaborating too. So, I think that you can either team up with someone who has the skill set that you're missing, or you can team up with someone that just has a different perspective, and it can change a lot about what you do or how you do it. I think they're incredibly beneficial. I am much more about collaboration than anything else, I think.
Perfect. That's wonderful to hear. Any other advice that you would like to add for young designers, artists out there who either want to like explore new things in what they're doing, or push some boundaries, or maybe, yes, do want to raise awareness or try to make social or environmental impact?
I would say if you're going to do anything, you have to do it from the heart, or have like a feeling in your gut. I don't like doing things just because other people are doing them or because I have to do them. The things that I think are that I've done that are most successful are the ones that I'm incredibly passionate about.
Mm.
That doesn't mean you have to hustle hard. It just means you have to really believe in something, or you have to really love it, or you have to feel it in your bones. And that is the purest, I think, form of motivation. And I think people really connect with that. It'll resonate. They can see through you pretty quickly. I mean, there's so much BS out there on the internet. So just, I would add only things that are meaningful to you.
That's so, so true and so useful. Thank you so much, Jamie. I love this like general conversation about what's just been going on with the internet and what it could be, and also responsibilities when it comes to design and art. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on all of those, and really, sparking some thoughts also among, I guess, like the creative crowd.
Thank you. Your questions were incredibly difficult, but really enjoyable.
I've been like thinking about these things myself, like until this call. And I didn't have an answer. So sorry for like throwing all of them at you.
No, it's totally fine. I really feel like there is a lot to continue to think about after this conversation. And certainly I don't have all the answers. So I think it'll be really interesting to hear if other people have different perspectives on these topics.
Great. Yes, then that's the goal, to spark like further ideation and like response in all these questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks. You too.
That is this week's episode of What's Wrong with the Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, podcast.what'swrongwith.xyz, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts so you never miss an episode. You can now also watch our podcast on YouTube. You can find a link in the description below. If you found value in this show, we would appreciate if you could rate us and leave a review, or you can simply tell your friends about us. For more details on our guests, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thank you.